This is something I've already said before, but I think so many people are quick to try to find the next Patrick Mahomes, the next Justin Herbert, the next Joe Burrow, the next great quarterback that is young. And to no fault of our own, we are wrong a lot of times. And to no, I guess, credit of our own, we are right sometimes. Look, the situation for Kenny Pickett is one that is very interesting. Because here's what the Pittsburgh Steelers have the opportunity to do. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the opportunity to sit Kenny Pickett for 18 weeks and possibly for up to 4 more weeks, depending on how the Steelers perform in the playoffs. What the Steelers also have the ability to do is show Kenny Pickett who the guys on this team are that he should be targeting once the time comes for him actually to be playing. It's no secret that this Pittsburgh Steelers team has a lot of weapons, with drafting George Pickens this year, with already having guys like Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. You have an option in the backfield in Najee Harris. You have other options in the backfield like Benny Snell. The other guys they're trying to figure out like Anthony McFarland Jr. Like this team is there. Offensively, they are there. And even though, like I said, I think a lot of people try to not confuse, that's not the right word. I think people try to attribute young quarterback situations, how they fare compared to what Patrick Mahomes had the year that he did not start when he was a rookie. Look, there's never going to be a year or a team with the ability to do what they did for their young quarterback, like what the Kansas City Chiefs did for Patrick Mahomes. They had possibly the best and smartest offensive-minded head coach in the NFL already in Andy Reid. They had another young, incredible play caller behind him. Not talking about Matt Nagy, even though he was on the coaching staff. I'm talking about Eric Bieniemy. The Kansas City Chiefs offense had a really good quarterback in Alex Smith. They had a really good running back room with Kareem Hunt and the rest of the guys that were in that room. The wide receiver room with Tyreek Hill and the rest of those guys. Travis Kelce at tight end, and an offensive line that was ready to compete. And that team in Kansas City made it really far, even without Patrick Mahomes. And that's the difference that a quarterback makes, is the difference between a wild card / divisional round team and a Super Bowl contender. And that's exactly what Patrick Mahomes did, was be the difference in a wild card to Super Bowl contending / Super Bowl champion team in Kansas City. Now, when you look at Pittsburgh, I've had the thought the whole time long that, Kenny Pickett, he probably should be the starter, right? He probably should, because if you're really going to go through a full season with Mitchell Trubisky, we kind of all have to remember Mitchell Trubisky got the job by being the backup to Josh Allen. Now, you don't really get... It's the weirdest thing in the NFL when a guy goes from being the backup to one of the best quarterbacks in the league to automatically being a starter for a team that should be competing. It's the Matt Flynn syndrome. It's basically the Matt Flynn syndrome. And it's just a little bit confusing. And I'm not in any way saying that Mitchell Trubisky is a bad quarterback, because I think I've been on the record plenty of times. And if not, I'll just say it again, that Mitchell Trubisky, if he did not have Matt Nagy as his head coach in his 4 seasons as a Chicago Bears starting quarterback, he would have been put not only in a better situation, but he probably would have won multiple playoff games if he had a better head coach, a better front office to put good players around him, and a team that actually would appreciate the young, good players on their team, unlike what's going on in Chicago now and what went on when Mitchell Trubisky was there. I will say that what Pittsburgh has right now is a little bit of a problem as well. Because if they don't start Mitchell Trubisky, they're going to be paying him to sit the bench. And then if Kenny Pickett doesn't work out right away, it's going to be like, okay, well, Mitch, now it's your turn. And then at that point, Mitchell Trubisky has done this before, where he's kind of been jostled in and out of the lineup. And it's like, if you're going to start Mitchell Trubisky, you have to start him from week 1 up until you can't anymore. And maybe that's week 10. Maybe that's week 5 that you can't start him anymore. Maybe you make the entire season thinking that Mitchell Trubisky is a really good quarterback. And I think that he has the ability to show that. Like I said, I think if he was in a better situation than Chicago, he'd still be there, and they never would have had to draft Justin Fields and do a complete overhaul, which, even though it's been a complete overhaul in Chicago, it's been the worst overhaul that we've seen in recent history for an NFL franchise. So, do the Steelers have to trade? Do they have to trade Kenny Pickett? That would be an interesting video, huh? Do they have to start Kenny Pickett? No, they don't. It would make a lot of sense for them to do it, but if they're going to start Kenny Pickett, they have to start him the whole season. It's the same exact thing with Mitchell Trubisky. If they start Trubisky, they have to start him the whole season. And it's not just because of the quarterback. It's because of everybody around the quarterback. You have to make sure everybody's comfortable with who is going to be throwing the passes to him, because if they're not comfortable with who's throwing passes to him, it's going to be much harder for them to catch the ball. I mean, that's obvious, right? It goes all the way down to the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator knows how to talk to his quarterback, and if the quarterback is going in and out and getting switched every single week, it's not going to work well with the offensive coordinator either, because he's going to be saying some things to one quarterback and some things to another, and then it's not going to work. We've seen this game before. It doesn't play out well. So for the Steelers, if you ask me, I mean, the word apparently is that Mitchell Trubisky is going to be the week 1 starter, right? And that's no fault to Kenny Pickett from what we've heard in reports. And it's the best possible option for them to just start Trubisky and try to have as much of a what year was that? 2017, 2018 Kansas City Chiefs type year, where you just let the guy sit. And hopefully, honestly, in the Pittsburgh Steelers, in their situation, you almost would hope that they're not going to be a good team around Mitchell Trubisky. Because honestly, if they're going to be a bad team around Trubisky, I'd rather them be a bad team around Trubisky than Pickett. Because if they're a bad team around Pickett, then the blame is automatically going to be put on Kenny Pickett. And look, Mitchell Trubisky is the perfect quarterback to just have a bad season around. Because if you have a bad season around Mitchell Trubisky, you can cut him and then bring in Kenny Pickett next year. Exactly what San Francisco is doing right now with Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Except the good part about Pittsburgh's situation is they're not paying Garoppolo $30+ million a year. They're paying Mitchell Trubisky $6 million a year? So it's a much better situation for Pittsburgh. If they're a bad team, they get a high draft pick and a fresh start next year with Kenny Pickett as the starting quarterback, which is probably the best possible situation for this team.